Good morning and welcome to episode 19 of the AutoTalk weekly wrap. Now, sorry if my camera's a little bit skew if it falls over. I had to chuck it all together quickly this morning. I had that dismantled for a live stream we did down on Tuesday at the BYD dealership in Auckland. So if you didn't watch that, now, well, that may be very much in the EV space. It's interesting because it was a real detailed discussion and explanation of electric vehicle charging. So if you have people in your team that are selling electric vehicles, or you're considering it, jump over to the EVs and Beyond YouTube channel and have a look at that video. It is quite long, but you can kind of skip through it. It's really valuable information. And as we've kind of touched on before and on the stream, some of the issues around selling EVs at the moment is just not understanding what's going on and mis-selling rather than being any issues with the car themselves. So probably a good little thing to have your staff sit down and watch, perhaps if they are selling EVs, or for yourself for that matter. So that's that explanation as to why the camera might fall over any second. But just to discuss, or to start the discussion for the week, I'll bring in welcome my usual panel co-hosts. In the middle is Matthew Hansen, and on the far right is Graham McDonald. Now, here's the question, Graham. Now that you are an owner officially of a previous generation Ranger, how much has your social credit slipped at the Lincoln Green on a Thursday night?
Ooh, that's a tough question there, Richard. I think at the Lincoln Green, I think if you owned the previous Ranger, then you might be now slipping down the Ranger. But because I've got a PX, at least I'm still with some degree of social standing out West Auckland. That's double cab ute drivers, right?
What about the hangar? Probably worse at the hangar. If you haven't got it at the hangar, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Basically, the hangar, you've got to have either the very latest Ranger or you're going to have a Harley. And if you haven't got one of those, well, they just don't let you in the door anymore, I think. Sorry. Do not pass.
So, Matthew, we'll touch on it. How we got your little video last week, but is the Ranger just going to kill? I mean, it's going to be a sales success?
Now, apologies in advance just slightly because my stream is cutting in and out for you guys. So if I'm stone-faced while one of you makes an amazing joke, it's probably because I can't hear you.
What are the odds, right?
What's going on? Never had this issue anyway. But anyway, the Ranger, yes, to me, we had a fairly brief drive around Havelock North, a fairly mild drive, a lot of logging roads, bit of motorway, and I got to drive the two different kinds of wild track and the XLT. And yeah, it is a very comprehensive incredible all-rounder of a ute. The Ranger was already, in my mind anyway, the standout ute in the segment. I think that it's just improved on that again, especially with that V6. That V6 is I'm not going to quite bring in the cliches and say it's a game changer, but it's very, very good. And it's proven to be very popular among those who've ordered.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Well, for a test, what you should do is either put two car seats in the back or a very small piece of aluminium joinery, and then you're back into its natural habitat. Off-road, who takes their Ranger off-road?
Yeah, I find it interesting that the Wild Track's fitted with a cover that makes it utterly useless to any tradie ever, anywhere.
Yeah, and they still buy them, right?
Yeah. No, well, congratulations, Ford New Zealand. You got a sales winner there. We can already tell that without even looking at it. I think it's pretty much pre-sold forever. So, yeah.
So here's an interesting point, guys. Given the Ranger's popularity, because we sound like we're Ford-centric here and we're not. They just happen to have the hot product of the moment. What a Toyota, in particular Toyota, what have they got in the grab bag to play catch up? Because the Ranger once again has played a significant step forward in the game of leapfrog, and it's left Toyota wanting. Where to from here for the Toyota Hilux?
Well, interestingly, on the day of the launch, they put out a release saying that they were doing some tweaks to it. I think it's just a wider track and a few other little things. But I guess I'm not sure what the wait time is now for when we'll see a new model Hilux. Yeah. I think though in that space there are people who will not buy a Ranger and people who will stick with a Hilux and vice versa.
That's right.
And then there's the market where it's more just down to price. I noticed the local Carters here has just replaced their Rangers with Nissan Navaras, and I suspect that comes down to they got a sweet deal from Nissan. there's room for a lot of people in the market, I think. If for nothing else, in that I suspect if you walked into your Ford dealership today and said, "Here's my $70,000, give me a Ranger," they'll be saying, "How does mid 2023 sound?" I don't know. What is that kind of the impression they gave you, Matthew? You're gonna be waiting a little while for a new Ranger if you went and ordered one right now.
So it was slightly more generous than that. They were saying that certain models, I think they mentioned the Sport as being one of the models, will be available by the end of the year if you were to order now. But Wild Track from memory was next year, and so were a few others. Yeah. So it's they're all doing that dance at the moment. I think that's kind of just your lot if you want one of the two best-selling utes in the country.
Mm-hmm. I think we've touched on this previously, but one of the things that these the supply issues are causing at the dealership level, of course, is we've seen the last 2 years just commissions have just had to be totally rethought because dealers are selling something now that they might not see the car land in the country and deliver, and thusly
that's right,
rack up that commission check for another 6 or 7 months. So I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But I wonder whether those structures will stay that way forever. Now, let's move on to something that is not staying that way forever. And interestingly, because it was a story we discussed last week, and I had messages from people very close to the subject afterwards saying, "We'll talk later." And that is the Too Cheap Cars conflict leaves shareholders exposed, according to the New Zealand Shareholders Association. And they've now dropped another one of the potential directors and replaced her with Michael Stiassny. Now, Michael Stiassny, of course, is the former chair of Waka Kotahi NZ Transport Agency and has been confirmed as a new board member at New Zealand Automotive Investments, or proposed board member, along with Gordon Shaw. Now, interestingly, of course, both Michael Stiassny and Gordon Shaw are ex-NZTA. Gordon Shaw was previously with the NZTA before he went to Vins and Jevic. When he was brought into Waka Kotahi, he was there as a bit of a fix-it man, I think, a bit of a hammer to fix a few things up. Didn't do a terrible job there, I don't believe. I'm not sure what your recollection of that is, Graham. But yeah, the NZ Shareholders Association has raised concerns of whether directors nominated by NZ Automotive Investments are independent enough to stand. This, the group says, leaves retail shareholders at the group caught in the crossfire. The chief executive of the NZ Shareholders Association, Oliver Mander, says the association will not support the director nominees nominated by NZA co-founder and major shareholder David Sena. Now, this, of course, was before the arrival of Michael Stiassny. I think the issue with that comes down to the fact that one of the directors it was discovered later, listed previously as an independent director, but was actually found to be a trustee of David Sena's family trust, so technically not independent. So, yeah, I mean, what's your experience with Stiassny been in the past? When you were chair of VIA, Graham, did you have many dealings with him while he was at the NZTA?
No, we didn't. I mean, don't forget, the role that he played at NZTA wasn't one that we were working with at the mid-level when it came to policy. But if you think back to his form, if you like, I mean, he look, and I don't say this in a negative sense, he has form that goes back over 30, 40 years of working known as being the hatchet man liquidator. And I was just thinking about this morning, right back, I suspect, to the late 80s, when we had the first financial crash, the whole, the Chase corporations and things like that. I think that's where he might have cut his teeth. And he was known as being the insolvency man to have, either to completely disassemble your business or to rebuild it. But he was like number one hatchet man around town. And I say that in a positive sense too. If your company had just gone to the wall, he was the guy that was there to salvage the bits and pieces. But it was a very, very brutal hammer as well, was his reputation. So it may be that's exactly what the NZAI Too Cheap enterprise actually needs, is someone just with that brutal financial experience to go through and say, right, this doesn't work, that goes. This doesn't work, that goes. This works, keep that, change this. It might be what they need, but it might be a really painful journey going through it, but it might be a painful journey that's required.
Mm-hmm. I think the interesting coming out now is not so much that these guys are coming in. These guys are going to come in. The question, I think, is going to come down to what's going to happen to the shares that David Sena doesn't own. Because if you look at, you've got shares held a large tranche of shares, I think nearly 40% owned by Eugene Williams. Probably other small pots of shares tied up with shareholders. You've got people who probably want to get out of this situation. Who is going to come in? Is David Senior going to buy it out? Does David Senior have enough money to deal with their bank debt? And I do believe there is quite a bit of bank debt that the company owes. They've been prominent in the past of publicising that they've reached facilities with various trading banks. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know. I'm not going to say anything particular naming wise, but I question whether there might be a move by perhaps some Japanese operators who have had expansion ideas into New Zealand. Who knows? It's too early to tell. I have some theories that I probably won't want to say in a public forum as yet.
No, well, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of things you can't say too, and there's also a lot of speculation as well. Like this industry, we all love to gossip and talk and speculate too. I would take this and saying that irrespective of a shareholder's perspective, this is like a watershed moment where the Too Cheap operation can either restructure for the future or it's going to go under. It's one or the other. And the market right now is an interesting one because it's clearly in trouble from a lot of different areas. You'd argue that's the perfect time to completely gut your business out. And as a former colleague of mine, Via, used to say, I like his phrase, he said, take all the blocks and just spill them out on the table and start again and build it back up again. And it might be a really good time to do that. And you'd argue and say that Michael Stiassny in particular is a very good person to have on board to do that. Because like I said, he's known as being an efficient but brutal operator. And it might be what Too Cheap need to face the future.
Mm-hmm. Right, so on to story 2. The ute surge can't stop now. Newmarket's downward trend and used vehicle registrations show slight relief in July. Another strong month of Toyota Hilux sales and the arrival of the new Ford Ranger could not stop the new vehicle market from trending downwards in July. 8,050 passenger vehicles and 3,050 commercial vehicles registered in July, amounting to an 11,000 vehicle total. Meanwhile, New Zealand's used vehicle market enjoyed slight reprieve in July, with Toyota registrations exceeding 8,000 vehicles for the first time in several months. 8,243 passenger vehicles and 409 commercial vehicles registered in July, making for an overall total of 8,652 used registrations for the month. This represents a 14.2% lift relative to the 7,417 used vehicles registered in June. So, Matthew, throw us some highlights. What's peaked up above the parapet as far as models that are doing well or badly as far as you're concerned?
So probably the interesting thing out of the month was the Ranger coming into the market in terms of sales. We saw the Ranger, I think it was fourth for the month with around with over 500 registrations, and that's just an insight into what we can expect from the new Ranger coming in. I suspect that we're going to have that's going to very, very quickly, sit where the Hilux sits in the sales category. They've got 5,000 orders to process over at Ford, so it's more just a case of how quickly they're going to be able to get those cars in on the boats. Mitsubishi was strong, but not as strong as Toyota. So in terms of that Mitsubishi v Toyota thing that we were talking about a few weeks ago, Toyota has eked ahead just a little bit in terms of, I believe they're leading both the passenger vehicle market and overall for the year. Yeah, it was an interesting month of data. Once again, no Tesla, which we've kind of become used to over the last few months. Tesla obviously has a sort of has been facing delays in terms of getting cars out the door in China. And so what we'll eventually see, and I think we'll be seeing it this month, well, next month when this month's numbers are published, is a tsunami of Tesla registrations. What's going on over there?
Well, all sorts of things. It's West Auckland, after all. I was going to say, a note to editorial staff: don't follow the bouncing ball of the mainstream media and in August say record numbers of EVs sold in New Zealand, because we know these things are a cycle. You've got to sort of smooth the wave out a wee bit, and Tesla's production issues and shipping issues mean that it's a very, very, it's like a sine wave curve. Sort of even out across the board and look at more consistent trends. Same with trucks. We had the announcements around the initiation of the Clean Car Rebate Scheme, where the newspapers were either screaming, truck market is decimated. No one's buying trucks in New Zealand anymore. And the next month, record sales of. So let's not go down the particular path, people, shall we?
Yeah, look, we're in a different market at the moment, and generally, if you've got a hot selling product, you will get yours in big lumps, and that's just what is happening. Tesla hasn't appeared for a few months, but they've had a ship come in the last few days, so we're going to see, hundreds of Teslas delivered and registered in what month are we into now? God, this year's going so fast. August. Yep. We're going to see a polar pile of BYDs registered. You're going to see. Yeah, who knows? And you've seen this in the past. I mean, you'd have months where Ranger would do 300-400 units for a trek along, and then one month they'd do 1,700. It's just the way things work at the moment. If you've got a big backlog, you might as well not take 100 a month. You take 600 in one hit. So that's just the way it works. But there definitely is negativity out there. I think, just speaking to everyone.
There is. Yep.
But whether that's good or bad, I don't know. Well, it's bad, I guess, but for some, for the good operators, it's seen as an opportunity, I think, to kind of, A, at the moment, catch up, and B, solidify market share and get things tidied up. The question is how long it's going to last, because a slowdown for a few months is one thing, a slowdown for a few years is a total other game changer, really.
Yeah, let's not forget, too, that we talk about a slowdown is good to catch up. And there's definitely been a slowdown in the used vehicle marketplace, without doubt. Everyone's seen it. But if your business, for example, is in shipping, logistics, or compliance, or supply, then a slowdown does you no good at all. You're not interested in playing catch-up, because your business is based around a consistent and steady volume coming on through. So you don't want to see any sort of slowdown. There's nothing to catch up on if you're not shipping cars. The market out of Japan is tough. It is really, really tough. And I think we're seeing a combination of a slower retail space in New Zealand, particularly for the traditional stock that we, as a marketplace, used to sell lots of and could access, sort of the bigger stuff, the Legacies, the Excellas, the Atenzas, the Vanguards, the RAV4s, the CRVs. That market slowed down, and particularly Euros and things too, used Euros. The stuff we want to buy, in terms of the market is demanding, the hybrid stock has just reached stratospheric levels of pricing in Japan. And so it is just either coming in at owing too much money, or it's not coming down at all. So our market is almost like a two-speed effect right now. And it's a little bit concerning as to how long that effect will remain and what the fallout's going to be. It's definitely cool, but it's cooler in certain areas more than others.
Now, moving on to another negative thing, another economic trend. The number of consumers missing car loan payments has grown. Financial hardship linked to New Zealand's growing cost of living is causing more customers to miss their vehicle loan payments. This is what Centric's managing director Keith McLaughlin believes is currently unfolding in the finance sector, with home loan struggles potentially soon to follow. Vehicle arrears are beginning to creep up, McLaughlin said in Centric's July credit indicator report. Products like mortgages and vehicle loans, secured lending products, are usually the last credit repayments people let slip, which indicates we could be starting to see signs of financial stress. Now, that's concerning for a number of factors. I mean, one, just general economic items. Two, those people who've missed a loan become very difficult to refinance the next time around, Graham. Is that your experience?
Yeah. Oh, they do. Or they end up going to the third and fourth tier and the bucket shop and the payday lenders instead to purchase motor vehicles. And this is one of the central arguments for a number of years now, talking about finance, particularly in the lower socioeconomic areas of New Zealand, where we talk about predatory lending. And there's often been this dynamic tension between officials and regulators and others that see that the idea of charging what they would see as predatory interest on loans doesn't match up with the fact that the loan market effectively is a free market. And the reason the interest rates are so high is because the credit worthiness is so poor. And it is a combination of previous repossessions or missed payments. And if you sort of then pile on top of that the changed regulations around triple CFA, which make it even harder, it could be really tough times unless you are what I call a predatory or a bucket shop or a last resort lender. Makes it really hard indeed, because you just don't want the business. If you're a second or a first tier lender, you just don't want the business. And that's going to make it really tough in those areas going forward for the next year or two.
Matthew, I'm just looking at the notes you sent here. I mean, have you got any information on the background of what demand for automotive loans is like? Is it still up there?
Yeah, so the report that that came with this article stated that auto loans are still listed as being quite strong, but obviously there's I guess, a bit of a false economy thing for that. If demand is strong but less people are likely to repay them, then it's not really the positive that it could be. I guess that's encouraging from the sense of being able to put cars out the door and things like that. But beyond that, it's not looking great.
I mean, our industry is incredible. I mean, we're all guilty. It's incredibly short-sighted, isn't it? Because we just want to put the car out the door now, and we don't think about the downstream effect of what we're doing. And look, you can argue and say, whose responsibility is it to manage a customer's long-term financial welfare? I mean, not just talking the length of the loan, but the length of their loans after that too. But I think newer used sectors, we're all in the same sort of boat, is that there's now becoming increasing pressure downstream on our customers when they're not in the dealership. They're signing everything up. It's all looking good. But what's happening downstream is going to be a problem potentially. And that affects our ability to sell vehicles 2 or 3 years down the track. How do we fix it? I don't know what the solution is, but I think we are certainly seeing those first signs of stress.
It concerns me it's almost become a joke on TikTok now that building apprentices going into a dealership, ticking up a brand new ute and then getting it repossessed.
Yeah. Well, and that, I mean, since time immemorial, that's been to an extent. The minute somebody gets a job, any job at all, they march down to the dealership and put their first hard-earned pay down on a new car. But that is changing. And it probably has to change too. I mean, we all want to, as I said, we all want to sell more cars today, now. But I think that to an extent, that mentality probably has to change.
Just sell people electric cars, then they don't have to pay for the gas, which means they can pay for the loan.
And they're harder to repossess too if they run out of electricity in the front yard, right, Richard?
Anyway, right. Tough road ahead. God, this is a negative podcast or live stream today. But we'll get to it. We'll get to some fun news afterwards in a second.
Good.
More than 360 transport operators, including industry representatives and government officials, arrived at the newly opened Te Pai Convention Centre in Christchurch over the weekend for the 2022 Trucking Industry Summit. Issues such as decarbonisation, deteriorating roads, underinvestment in infrastructure, labour shortages and increasing compliance costs were a focus, but there was a recognition that finding solutions will not be a quick fix. New Zealand Trucking Association Chief Executive David Boyce says decarbonisation, infrastructure and regulation all need to work hand in hand to ensure the New Zealand economy can prosper now and into the future. It's clear that there's some stuff around the trucking industry, Matthew, that they're saying just isn't working at the moment. He's frozen.
Matthew. He's other way. He's Matthew.
He's gone.
He's
what?
Matthew.
I'm back.
Ah!
So just to give context, you guys are dropping out about every 40 seconds and then coming back every 40 seconds on my stream. So I'm doing that newsreader thing where I try and look professional with a sullen face at the camera.
Anyway, we were just talking about the Trucking Industry Summit. Thank you for joining us, and how the NRC chief executive CEO is saying that the status quo is just not working. I guess he's talking there in regards to, how I guess in regards to supply of drivers or how decarbonisation is going to work. Or what are they after? More government support?
I'll fire through James Smith's quote. He's obviously the chief, the COO of NRC. Despite increased investment and funding, the roads are in a worsening state of disrepair, largely because the capacity to deliver the work is just not there. And this is being exacerbated by global issues such as inflation forcing the cost of everything up and significant labour shortages. And he goes on to talk about that there's no silver bullet regarding the degrading roads and that sort of thing. Obviously, it's been a huge news story over the last month. The status of roads around the country, potholes everywhere, and things like that. I've certainly seen it, and I've had plenty of friends who've commented to me that they've noticed it as well.
Yeah,
It's interesting that the guy who got in trouble for drawing penises on potholes has now switched to drawing ducks on potholes, because I think he's hoping if he draws ducks, rather than Dick's, he will not get in so much trouble.
Man was a genius.
Yeah, look, the roads are atrocious.
They are. And one of the biggest issues that the NRC and the other bodies that represent the transport industry face is there's like this dynamic now, on the camera there, you've got ideology versus pragmatism, and it's a bit like this at the moment. We talk about decarbonisation of the fleet, we talk about different modes of transport and bits and pieces, but none of them seem to have taken a ticket on the pragmatism bus. And no one's quite worked out how that actually is going to work. And I think for the trucking industry in particular, in terms of trying to sort of move forward to plan to figure out future needs, future fleet, future requirements, it's very hard to know what to do because there aren't any real solutions. There is ideology that is driving potential for change, but how that change should occur is not necessarily being signalled at all. And I do feel sorry for them, not least of all the fact the roads are currently just rubbish. They really are. Except, I might add, I had a week of very good time indeed down in the central eastern Otago area around Dunedin a couple of weeks ago. And I want their roads. They were nice, beautiful, lovely, well-maintained, well-kept roads. And I factor, to be fair, some of the areas was just the actual lack of transport as opposed to the lack of maintenance. But the big arterial routes that we all use in the North Island in particular, man, they're in a shocking state.
I think down in that part of the South Island, it's also down to the rock that they use in the seal, isn't it? It's a different kind of rock they use down there, and it is a far more durable road surface, I believe. Interesting up here, we've just seen a flyover of the Warkworth motorway extension, and that is looking amazing, and I'm super excited for that to open, albeit that's late. That was supposed to be open in May this year, and it's going to be early next year. The dome improvements are just a mess. Sure, they're getting the cable through the middle, but for some reason, freshly laid roads are just falling apart. Just the quality is terrible. I think one of the worst things they did was drop the fuel tax and reduce the ruck. What a dumb thing to do. It was just virtue signalling from the government in regards to cost of living, because all they're doing is having to subsidise money that was actually going in to fix the roads, and the fuel companies are making more money than ever. And people in an element within the diesel driving community has gone and rorted the system anyway. And sure, they're saying they're going to catch them and so forth, but I don't think they will. How can you catch someone for buying something that people can buy in advance anyway?
Well, as I say, if you put the framework in place for this to happen, can you really blame people for doing it? And people talk about, they're rorting the system. Well, you put the framework in place for things to happen that way. Are you really surprised that it happens?
Yeah.
What I think the biggest issue is, or bigger issue, and there's two things to touch on. They're two completely separate issues, but they have the same downstream effect, is who's going to be the brave minister to put the ruck cost back up and the duty, the excise and the petrol back up again?
Well, you see, but there's an element to that though, isn't it? So no, they don't have to. So there has been an end date on it both times, and what they've done is extended it. It's the question is who doesn't extend it, in the same way that in regards to the exemption on ruck for EVs, is no one actually has to put it up; they just have to choose not to extend it.
So here's my take on this. So politically speaking, I will put a shiny 50-cent coin up to the two of you right now that they're going to play kick the can on this until after the election. And if the current government stay in power, they will then say, well, here we are, here for another 3 years, we can do it now, because let's face it, you do everything nasty within that first little period, so you give everyone 2 years to forget about it. And if they get turfed out and it's another government that is formed, the current government say, well, you see what happened, you elected that lot, all the bad things happened. And so they're all going to play kick the can until after next year's election. And that's a second issue that I wanted to touch on very briefly this morning, Richard. I know this is against the run sheet that you get that I don't, just saying. And that is what is going to happen with the Clean Car program, with the blowout of rebates versus fees. Who's going to be the person that calls on that? And it's a really serious question that's doing the rounds, that's rumbling around the trade right now, is given the wording of the regulation around the ability to at any time halt the processing of rebates, I mean, that is just going to be horrid. I mean, it's horrid.
I hate to tell you this, but it's not going to happen.
Well, so
let's run. Well, it's not going to happen like that. Let's run through this. So we've talked about that. We've had a lot of stuff come out in the mainstream media last week or so about how there's $100 million deficit and they've only collected about 20 odd million or whatever it is, and they've paid out 100. Well, there's two aspects to that. Is that the actual if you read AutoTalk, which I'm sure you guys do, and you will know we reported these figures a month ago. So the mainstream media have kind of finally read AutoTalk and gone, oh, look at this. Most of that differential is actually in the vehicles that were sold before. So in the 9-10 months before they started charging the fees versus when they were just giving the rebate on the electric cars. You then have the gap, and we discussed it earlier on in this podcast in regards to the fact that in March you had a heap of utes registered. There are still brands now advertising utes selling. We can sell you a ute without the fee-bait attached because they pre-registered. LDV for one. LDV is promoting that they have vehicles that do not attract the ute tax because obviously they pre-registered them. So there was a huge big lump of stuff that didn't have to pay a fee. Conversely, you then had pretty much every hybrid and electric vehicle sale in the first quarter of this year pushed back after the date. So you had a whole pile that collected it. So we still don't actually know what the imbalance is, and we still won't know until everything settles down delivery-wise until the last quarter of this year, I think is about when we're going to be realistically get there. Once we get there, I believe the balance will be far closer than we think it is. And I think the system will actually be pretty cost neutral, if not collecting a few more fees than what it's paying out. As that shifts, of course, they don't have to stop the rebate. All they have to do is slowly increase the fees and slowly reduce the fee bait. And I think that will be done in cuts so small that they will be barely noticed. Like it'll be 1 month, the fee on a Ranger will go up $50. The rebate on Levy will go down $50 kind of thing. It'll be that kind of mechanism. This whole massive big difference is just false politics flag. The government knew it would happen. The officials knew it would happen because they put $300 million in the fund to start it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well,
I may be wrong.
Right, Richard. I hope you're right.
That is how the system is designed, and I believe that is how the system is going to work. But who knows? Who knows? The only way it would go horribly wrong is if everyone stopped selling utes tomorrow and everyone started buying EVs.
It's not utes. I mean, we sort of keep touching on utes as being the architect, if you like, of this whole school, the protagonist of this whole scheme. Look at the used vehicle marketplace and look at what the number 1 and 2 and 3 consistent selling vehicles now are. Is with the price of petrol having escalated, everyone's buying more fuel efficient vehicles and predominantly hybrid vehicles that all attract a rebate. Now I know that it takes a lot more than 13 or 1400 acquis a month to offset or to put the fund into arrears compared to 5,000 Rangers. But a monthly basis, if you add up the number of even just used vehicles entering the market now that attract a fee, I'm pretty sure, given the number of new commercials that are being sold, that there's a disparity even now. And that's looking at a like-for-like sale of vehicles. I still think there's a disparity, and it's a bigger disparity than you might actually think.
Mm-hmm. I guess the thing there is if you look at the ultimate goal, which is to reduce carbon, then getting people into aquas rather than utes is probably what they want. So, because it's the pool is one. You can offset a fee on a new vehicle with a rebate on a used vehicle. Mm-hmm. There's actuaries there that have been working out where they think the market's going to go. So it'll be interesting to see whether they get their numbers right. I think they will. I think they will, and I think we'll just see incremental raises.
Fabulous if they are, because goddamn, we can't get it right all the time.
Right,
going vacant.
Let's get past this and throw an absolute gem of information out there for those who have taken the time to watch to the end of this. And I've hinted at this previously, and this is kind of an advanced announcement before the official announcement next week. But we'll tell you as many details as we can on the weekly wrap, because the weekly wrap is awesome. Now, we are launching AutoTalk Live. So AutoTalk Live is going to be basically the ultimate car dealers day out. It is going to be held on November 11 at the Little Creatures Catalina Bay Brewery in Hobsonville, Auckland. Now, could you think of a better place to get a bunch of dealers together? A big, funky, open air.
Place.
Exactly.
You don't know where Richard's talking about. I tell you right now, this place is the bomb. For a function, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
So it's basically a rebuilt hangar where they used to store the seaplanes with a brewery inside it for Little Creatures beer, which is a great beer. Sorry. And we have taken over the place for the whole day, from morning to night. We've got some amazing speakers lined up who are going to wow the crowd with their information, ranging a whole pile of things from industry benchmarks through the Clean Car Standard, through online marketing, digital, a whole pile of great content. We are going to, that day, record the AutoTalk, well, not record, live stream the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap from the event. You guys are going to be coming on stage and embarrassing yourselves with me for 10 minutes. We'll keep it short. We'll keep that one short.
Richard, don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. It's just going to be the coolest of days. We'll have lots of suppliers there to tell you about their stuff as well. We will feed you well, just to run through, because I know it's important. You're going to be getting breakfast. You're going to be getting lunch. You're going to be getting snacks in between. We're going to have barista coffee. We are going to have, at the end of the day, at least an hour of open bar, because everyone loves that to end the day. Catalina's Bay is great because you can get there on the ferry. It's, I think, $5.75 from town on the ferry, so you can hop from wherever you are on a ferry and get there, hopefully. If not, there's lots of parking on site, but take an Uber because you want to drive. You want to have a drink at the end of the day. It's going to be awesome. Tickets are going to go on sale next week. They are going to be $299 plus GST per person, which, if you just take into account the food, is pretty darn cheap. And if you consider a day at the AADA started at about 4 figures, then this is just going to be pretty darn cool. So to find out more, make sure you are subscribed on autotalk.co.nz to get our emails. We will be sending out information on that in the next magazine and emailing out from there. And we look forward to seeing you all at AutoTalk Live. And you're going to hear lots more about it in the coming months as we get that tied down and finalise that. Super excited.
As a dealer, Richard, just look, if you're a dealer principal watching this right now or part of a larger team, I'm not here to market this for you, but I'm going to say it's been a long time between drinks that the industry has had a chance to get together and actually have industry time. Bring your team, get your management team, get your good team together, and think about actually having a really good opportunity to network, to hear a lot of different stories, a lot of different opinions, and just recharge yourself. But honestly, it's been a really tough couple of years in this business from a whole lot of different reasons, not necessarily trading itself, but all the different factors. Let's actually get together for the first time in a long time and talk about it and share it and have some really good space to do so. I think it's an excellent idea. And I encourage anybody out there in this, certainly the dealer space, is think really carefully about bringing your team and making an occasion of it.
Yeah, and we've built this for networking, so all the food and all the beverages are all designed to be very mobile. There's no sit-down meal as such. It's all designed to be super, you can grab it, go, have a chat, lean around a leaner. We've even set it up so that if you struggle to get away from the yard for a day, the whole venue is structured so you can either watch the speakers from right in front of the speakers, in front of the big screens. That's how we want most people to watch it. But there are areas where we'll have the speakers on screen and on audio and their presentations playing. So if you do have to duck away and yell at your groomer through text message for 5 minutes, you can do that out of the way. So I think we've lost Matthew there, but look, that's enough excitement for today. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We will be back next week, and look out for the information in AutoTalk next week. Thanks so much.
Happy weekend, everyone.